everyone. Welcome to week 5 of the No One Asked podcast. I'm Ethan.
And I'm Brock. Once again, thank you for tuning in to the No One Asked podcast. We appreciate it. For those of you who are tuning in and listening to the podcast but haven't followed the Instagram page, it's No One Asked _podcast. We'd appreciate the follow there, and that's where we get a lot of our fan interaction and talk back and forth between us. So we'd super appreciate that if you guys gave us a follow and send us some feedback. But we'd like to start off this week just formally apologising for the delay of last podcast and then this one coming out a little bit late. We've just had a little bit of a change of schedule.
Yeah, so normally what we were doing was we were recording on a Friday and then I'd edit it over the weekend and publish the podcast on a Monday. But with all the sport that goes on over the weekend, that obviously is key to our podcast. We'd be doing previews of games that are going on while I'm editing, and then we publish the podcast Monday and the preview would be worthless. So we thought it would be better if we shifted back to recording and editing and publishing on a Wednesday night. So you'll have a midweek podcast now instead of a start of the week podcast. So I don't know. I hope it works out for everyone. Yeah.
But yeah, it should be pretty handy because it's going to be, you'll listen to the podcast right before the games start, probably that Thursday or Friday, and then tune in for the weekend. So it'll probably work out a lot better. Like just Ethan said, it wasn't going to work out. You'd be listening to the preview of a game that had already happened. So it just wouldn't make sense.
Yeah, exactly. So speaking of previews, NRL Finals this weekend.
Yes.
Preliminary Finals.
Yes, very
How are you
interesting.
feeling about them?
Looking forward to it. Obviously, I'm a Storm supporter and we ended up on top and that's good. But I'm also, born in Canberra, so I'm a bit of a supporter there. So I'm looking forward to the repeat of a few weeks ago where Canberra got the better in Melbourne.
Yeah.
Personally. But there's a lot of quite interesting games shaping up that have had a few, matches in previous weeks. So a bit of revenge, bit of comeback maybe. What do you think?
Yeah. No, I agree, man. I think it's going to be good. I really wish the Tigers made it over the Sharks.
Yeah.
Because obviously my brother's a Tigers fan, but I just think Tigers are cooler than the Sharks. And I'm actually disappointed that the Rabbits jumped the Raiders because I was sort of hoping that the Roosters or the Raiders would have to play and then whoever loses, if they win again, has to face the Storm later instead of you guys going at it now and then. But, I mean, I'm keen for it. A couple of the matchups look really good.
Yeah.
I'm actually keen to see the Eels and the Broncos game, to be honest. See how that goes.
Yeah, I actually think every game is relatively even. And I feel like that doesn't work out most years.
Exactly.
But like Melbourne-Canberra, everyone would assume Melbourne's the better team, but Canberra beat them a few weeks ago. Same as Roosters, Rabbitohs, you'd probably presume that Roosters are better, but South Sydney got the better of them last week. Manly, Cronulla pretty even, and Para, Broncos are relatively even as well. So it's 4 really good games in my opinion.
Yeah, it is. And I think I really like the top 4 because they're all teams that even if they lose, you're happy to see them play again.
Yeah.
I feel like the bottom 4 of the top 8, I feel like if they lose and get knocked out, no one really cares. But making it a do or die maybe might make those teams clean up their performances a bit and actually play half decently.
Yeah.
Particularly the Broncos, hopefully.
Yeah, it should be interesting. What are we thinking? Is there anyone that's standing out to you that you're liking or anyone you think's definitely got the lead, I guess, coming into this week?
I mean, really, I honestly, for all the games, I'm just going to pick whoever's higher ranked.
Yep.
So I'm probably going to take the Storm over the Raiders, Roosters over the Rabbits. I'll probably take the Seagulls to edge the Sharks, and then I think the Eels probably burn the Broncos just because I feel like the Broncos scraped into the finals. I don't feel like they are a finals team, if that makes sense.
Yep.
I feel like it was just a product of good luck and a half decent run. So yeah, and I like that winger that the Eels have. I can't remember his name, but I hope he scores like yeah, that guy.
Yeah.
I hope he scores like 17 tries this weekend.
Yeah, no, I think it's predictable to go that way. Like, in my opinion, I think, Melbourne's going to get the better of Canberra. I think just because Canberra beat Melbourne a few weeks ago, it's, maybe they'll save in something for it. But I think, normally in those situations, a team doesn't lose twice. I see the same thing happening with the Roosters Rabbitohs situation. I think, in my opinion, Roosters are the better team, even though South Sydney did win. So I think, I'd be predicting that Roosters would win. Manly Cronulla, that's actually going to be a pretty good game.
Yeah.
Like, the games in the top 4 are obviously really great games because they're the best of the best. But I think Manly Cronulla is a lot better game than Parramatta Brisbane. Like, Manly and Cronulla are two teams that are really strong on their day, but they're just so hit and miss. So if they're both hitting, this is actually going to be a fantastic game, potentially even the game of the round, I reckon.
Yeah, I think you're right with that. I really think you are.
But we could also see another scenario where, one or both fall and just falter this week, and then it's just a dull blowout, or both teams look horrendous for the next week.
Yeah. I hope that's not the case.
Oh, no. Because you don't want that for finals.
Oh, no. And I feel like those bottom 4 teams need that confidence because the top 4 teams, I think there is a definite gap between all of them. And I think whoever plays needs a good performance in a good game to sort of get the confidence to take on the big boys next or the week after. So,
yeah, you need something good going into it. But then the Parramatta Brisbane, I don't know. I think these are probably, even though Parramatta finished 5th, I think these are probably the 2 worst teams in the top 8. I think, like you said, Brisbane kind of scraped in and were lucky to be there. And I don't know, maybe you can disagree with me and bring up something else, but I'm not a big supporter of Parramatta as is and don't watch too many of their games. But I don't really think they're that top quality team that, are going to be making it into the top 8 because they have quality players. It seems like they've just been a really solid team and are obviously been coaching well, like that they've gotten here. But even them, like, they're very hit and miss as well. Like, they're either blowing out a team like 30 points or they're losing by 30 points. Like, that's what I've seen. So I think I'm on the same page with you. I probably think Parramatta's going to beat Broncos. But if they're on an off day, like, Brisbane are just a constant mediocre team where Parramatta are either really good or really bad. And it's going to be interesting to see what week, they get the Broncos.
Yeah, exactly. And I really think the Eels probably it rests on Mitch Moses and how he plays. And he sort of dictates how up and down they are.
Yep.
And yeah, like you said, they got a couple of decent players, but it's not like a squad of stars or studs. It's just a bunch of, like up and down, inconsistent players.
Yep.
So I hope they show up, but yeah, it's probably might be the least fun game of the round. I think the one thing I will say about it is that it is a bit annoying that the Roosters and the Rabbits it's on Thursday or Friday night, and then the Raiders Storm is the Saturday afternoon game, or like earlier in the arvo. Like Manly and like the Eels and Cronulla is a good game, but I feel like that would have been better on the Sunday arvo, and then have the Eels and the Bronx play Saturday afternoon, and then put like the game that everyone wants to see. I feel Storm versus Canberra on Saturday night, because I just hate afternoon games.
Yeah, no, that would make a lot of sense, I think. Yeah, you're definitely right there.
I mean, it's a bit pointless to bring up, but like it just I just feel like it's such a waste of a game to sit it at 5:40 instead of playing it at night. But I guess they do have to put the knockout games where someone's team might get knocked out of the finals on prime time or whatever. So that might have been the decision there. Yeah,
that's a fair call. Yeah, but I certainly agree. You'd think the 2 big games of the week would be those main nighttime Friday, Saturday night, where the other ones were 2 afternoon games, and it was kind of like a bit more chill. But I guess, like you said, it's a do or die. So, yeah, I don't know. But yeah, it's an interesting point to bring up for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess one thing, obviously, everyone will be hoping for this weekend is that the bunker doesn't have too big of a play in the games. But I mean, really, like, I don't know what you feel about it, but I feel like bunkers or TMOs or like whatever you want to call them, fourth officials, I feel like they're only the product of the rules.
Yeah.
And I feel like at the same time, slowing down a game and watching it at 1/16th speed is like counterproductive to how it's played. I also feel like if you want to have a fair game and you want to decide who the real winner is, then you have to use that tool and use it to follow the rules. I guess the instance that we're talking about is when we got tagged in the Facebook post about how a couple of the old people, or the
like
old
Andrew
leagueies, went off. Went off at it because they slowed it down to 1/16th and overruled a try that grazed a guy's thumb. But at the end of the day, I feel like that's just it's the rules of NRL, and I hate that knock-on rule where if you just drop it, it gets turned over. I feel like that's so stupid. But I guess, like, at the end of the day, the TMO is just there to make sure that the game's been refed right, and they don't really, like, they obviously dictated how that game went, but they're just following the rules. I feel like if the rules were a bit less stupid, then maybe some of the bunker decisions would be.
Yeah.
But what do you think about it?
I think you quickly brought up the whole knock-on situation. That's a really big issue. Like, if someone drops the ball, it goes backwards, like, clearly. Like, there's no doubt about it. Refs are just calling it a knock-on now, which doesn't actually make sense. And even there was a few weeks ago that Cameron Smith did, like, a blatant... Like, it wasn't blatant. It was pretty, like, flat knock-on. And it didn't get called. And I was quite surprised. Not because I necessarily went, yeah, that was forward. Like, it was pretty in the middle. But, like, it just didn't get called. So there's no consistency there. But I also, you know... Personally, I'm someone who's not like the refs are ruining the game. And that's what a lot of people are like nowadays. But I disagree. It's kind of just the amount rules are changing and stuff nowadays is ridiculous, like especially in league. And there's a few rules that definitely, you know, could change to better the game, but they're changing almost weekly. So you've got a different, you know, way you have to ref each week. But coming back to the bunker situation, my biggest issue with that, I think the refs, there was no reason for them to call it back. Like,
yeah,
I guess if the guy went, he stuck out his hand pretty close, we should check it. Fair enough. But my issue is, if he had to make that breakaway and then got tackled 2 meters out from the try line, 100% they wouldn't have gone back and checked that.
Yeah, that's true.
And you see that quite consistently. I think there was a few years ago in Origin that Greg Inglis made an intercept and went the entire field, or, you know, it was a scenario like that, scored a try, and they pulled it right back for what seemed like absolutely no reason whatsoever, but they just wanted to use the bunker.
Yeah.
And it got pulled back for it when the refs, everyone in the stadium, no one saw any issues with it. So I think in a way they're kind of abusing the bunker and TMO. Not so much TMO. I think rugby union probably have it a lot better. But rugby league, they're kind of abusing. It's just like they're almost afraid to, you know, make a call. But the thing is, at the moment, fans and even like the board of NRL are putting refs under so much pressure to make every call right. They don't want to be seen making a big screw up. Otherwise, they're generally just getting fired on the spot. And that goes in
which is
all
insane.
Sports. Like, even the same thing's happening with NFL. You make one big call that changes a game. Just a game that might mean nothing at all. But you make one wrong call, like, and refs left, right, and center are getting fired for it. So it's, you know, it's ruining the game a little bit, but it's also the refs just covering themselves in case they do make a wrong call.
Yeah. And I think you're onto something there. But I also feel, I don't know, I'm making this up on the spot sort of, but I guess in sports where it's more stop-start, like the NRL and the NFL, one play seems to have a lot of difference. And I think, like you said, that means that the board and the fans are putting a lot more pressure on these guys because, like, if they have a decision that doesn't go their way, it has a lot more impact than it does in, say, rugby or even the NBA, I feel. Because sometimes the refs, I feel like in, like, union and the NBA, like, the fan bases have sort of grown accustomed to the refs making mistakes because it's just like there's either so much going on like there is in rugby or there's like 300 other plays that are going to happen in basketball. And in league and like NFL, your possessions or your chances are so like
they're limited,
smaller and so much more limited. That's what I was looking for, limited. Like, I feel like everything has to be right because if it doesn't and it doesn't go your way, it can hurt your team. And I feel like that just feeds this mentality where each week, like the NRL fans, if a ref messes up, they sort of get on his back and then they get onto the NRL and the NRL fires the guy or something. So like you said, I feel like they are scared to make a mistake. And like those guys said too, you shouldn't be. But like, what are you to do? You've got someone breathing down your neck and you'll have fans that will get angry at you if it's a game-changing play and you get it wrong. Like, you almost are sort of forced to make sure you're making the right call. But
absolutely.
I mean, yeah. at the end of the day, it is pointless because, like you said, if he had got tackled, I don't think they go back and review it. So
Yeah, for sure. And I don't know, I think rugby league, you should almost be thankful because the TMO just goes off whenever they feel like if there's a penalty or something. Usually, isn't that the case?
I'm not too sure.
I think I find it like it happens in the middle of a game. It's not like just a try or anything. Like they can use it in the middle of the game to review something whenever they want. Like I'm pretty sure. So the game we went and watched, last year, I think, the Sunwolves Reds game, when they were looking for the red card, they went through TMO and they were going through that just in the middle of the game. Like it's kind of like the VAR in soccer now.
Yeah.
So I think the league should almost be thankful that's not the case. Every single time there's a penalty or something, it's getting blown back. But it's also in a situation if they were doing that, then the refs aren't making as many wrong calls. So so you got this balance of the refs are pulling up the game too much and not letting the game flow, which was what Andrew Johns and stuff were complaining about. Or you go the other path where they're making wrong calls and screwing up an entire game.
Yeah.
Let's look at the NFL last year in the NFC Conference Championship. You had Saints Rams, one of the final plays of the game that sent it to overtime. The Rams defender took out the Saints guy kind of blatantly, but the refs didn't pull it back, and I think that was just because it was in the final minute of the game. Like if they had blown the ref the whistle there, so many people would have complained about it. But because they didn't, and then Saints went on to lose the game, which I think was off them not playing the best. Saints fans don't blame the Saints team for losing that game. They blame the refs.
They blame the refs. Yeah.
And there were so many situations that, there was examples even throughout the game that the refs were actually favouring Saints in many scenarios. But because that was the one call that changed the game, that's all they remember. They remember the most recent thing happening. So, but it's this balance of, do you want the right calls to be made or do you want a free-flowing game?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's a tough call, but it's kind of something that, you need to be accustomed to.
And I guess at the end of the day, we're all human. And I guess everyone wants that middle ground, but it's really hard to come by because so much decision making is made by your interpretation of laws.
Yep.
And that just confuses everything because you can't just ref something by the rule book. It's your interpretation of it. Like one guy's definition of it, holding onto the ball in rugby, for example, of someone holding it onto it too long is completely different to another guy's.
Absolutely.
One guy's could be 5 seconds while the other's is 3, and it doesn't seem like much at the time, but it's just at the end of the day, I guess we're all human. And personally, I'd rather the game be 100% right, even if it means it's less free flowing, because I'd rather be able to look back and say my team definitively got pulled up on everything, but that was because we gave away too many penalties.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree.
It was our fault. Even though the game didn't flow as much as it should, and that might have hurt us, we lost because of this. It's not just we lost because there was a try that they should have pulled back. And I hate playing in games like that where there's tries awarded that shouldn't have been awarded and shit. So, I'm for it. I get why it's annoying, but, it's just your personal... Again, it's we're all humans, so it's your opinion.
Yeah. And I'm definitely... sorry about that. Personally, I'm not one for blaming refs either.
Yeah, no, exactly, 100%.
If you don't give them a reason to pull you back or so on and so forth, they can't. They have no reason to.
Yeah.
The only issue I have... So, going to the bunker, going to TMO, pulling up penalties and stuff, I have no issue with whatsoever. The ref needs to ref it how he sees it. The only issue I have, especially going to the bunker, is when they're kind of just can you just check that was correct? They don't have a reason for it specifically. They're just can you make sure, essentially, can you just cover me and make sure I've made the right call?
Yeah.
And that's what it is. But I think week to week, my issue is, and like you said, it's down to personal opinion, and I think it's due to the constant rule changes, that reffing seems to be very different week to week. And so let me use the example of the Penrith-Canberra game a few weeks ago. Canberra, Josh Hodgson is great at the whole strip rule that's going on. And personally, I have an issue with it, but I'll get to that in a second. They were using that throughout the entire first half, and they must have done it to Penrith 3 or 4 times, and it was great. Like, every time Penrith started to get some momentum, Josh Hodgson or whoever else would call their money ball or whatever their code word is, strip the ball, momentum completely dies and Penrith don't know what to do, and it meant Raiders were completely on the offense. But the second half, after Raiders had done it all first half and dominated Penrith, whenever they attempted it, even if it was perfectly okay, the refs just pulled it up almost as like a pity thing, which I can actually understand, but it's incorrect to rule it that way. Like, it comes into which way you want to see it, and, you know, the whole 50-50 thing. But it's kind of like, if you're not going to pull it up in the first half, don't pull it up in the second half. But it's also, you know, does he have someone in his ear going, hey, mate, it's gone through a couple of times, pull it up, don't allow them to do it. Because fans want, a more free-flowing game. So stop, you know, letting the other team have it when they're on the attack. Like, potentially that's the idea behind it.
No, I think you're right there. Like, I think it is. And like you said, I really think when refs completely change the way they're reffing halfway through a game, I think it is someone either calling in or someone saying, like, hey, you need to make this game more appealing. Like, we've put it at this time slot, or we've put it at this time so that we get the most fans, and Canberra's totally winning because of this. You need to change. I feel like that's more what it is, but I mean, yeah, it's just annoying at the end of the day when refs, like you said, like week to week changes are annoying, but halfway through a frigging game and you start ruling the complete opposite way, it's bound to piss people off. And I think that's what, obviously Mum's a Raiders fan. I think that's what pissed her off sometimes. Is like the Raiders will strip so well that the refs just like start pitying the opposition and then change the game at halftime, and then the Raiders get penalised out of it because they've obviously game planned all week to be able to strip all game. Which is such, like, obviously I'll ask you first before I finish, but what do you think about that rule?
I think I'm a rugby union player who, one of my favourite part of the game was turnovers. Like, you know, and I think you're the same. As a flanker, all we're told to do is mess with the ball and disrupt their game. And that was constantly being over the ruck, trying to get the ball and cause a penalty, or stripping the ball in open play. So I love being able to strip the ball. I think it's crap in NRL though. The way, and especially, you know, I see Raiders do it, and every other team's doing it, so don't get me wrong, but Raiders are the best at it, so they're the most obvious team to choose about it. When you've got 3 people jump into a tackle, so there's now 3 defenders and 1 offensive player in this, you know, tackle that's being made, and all of a sudden 2 of the defensive players just jump off and then they do a one-on-one strip. I think that's crap.
Yeah.
Like, in my opinion, the moment, and I think the rule's going to change next year, but they can't change it because they've had it this way all year. I think if the moment more than 1 defensive player enters that tackle, you should no longer be able to strip the ball. You can all jump off and jump back on again. Like, it doesn't count. Like, it's disrupting the game too much. Like, and I understand it's taking advantage of a situation, and that's what it becomes when these teams are at such elite levels they are now. They have to push the boundaries with absolutely everything, take advantage of rules and so on. And that's in every sport. Like, I used to do that, for example. You learn this growing up in rugby union. If you get over someone with the ball and, you know, they haven't released the ball, you don't actually try and pull the ball out necessarily. You actually push it into their body and tell the ref, like, scream at the ref that they're not releasing it. Even though they're trying to place the ball, you learn to push it back into them and you get a penalty. Because you'd rather get a penalty and be able to push 20, 30 metres forward on a kick and then go to a line out than pick up the ball and potentially get tackled straight back over the ruck. Like, you know, it's just that taking advantage of a rule, and that's what they're doing. It's a one-on-one strip, but the offensive player who's just made this crash ball or whatever isn't actually thinking about ball security now, because he thinks if they rip the ball out, I'm getting a penalty anyway. So I'm going to look for the offload. If they rip it out, I get a penalty. So that's the mindset they're in. And then all of a sudden it gets stripped out and they're like, what? That's, there's more than one in, and they look around and go, oh crap, 2 have dropped off and it's a one-on-one strip now. And I think even the players are hating the rule. But, I think, like I said, at the end of the year, I definitely see a change happening because too many coaches have complained about it and so on and so forth. But they can't change it now because it's been happening all season. But what's your opinion?
Well, no, I think you're 100% right, man. I think they will change it because I think was it a law change or was it like just an add to it? Because it was never like that, was it? Like you couldn't just drop off. Like it had to be if 3 people go in, you sort of have to, like you can't just drop off and strip. It sort of had to be if 3 people go in, then you can't strip the ball.
See,
is that the way it used to be?
I'm not 100% certain, but I don't think there was a rule change. I actually think it's a team going, hey, it's a one-on-one tackle. You have to be one-on-one strip. So if we add them into the tackle and then take them off, we've now made it a one-on-one tackle and we can officially strip the ball again. Like I don't think NRL went and put it in the rule book and went, hey, if they drop off, we're going to allow it from now on. I think it was just a situation of whatever coach it was, whatever teamer it was, went, hey, what if we do this? If we do this technique, it's technically a one-on-one strip and we get the ball back, but the defender's not ready for it whatsoever. So I don't think there was a rule change, but I'm most definitely might be wrong about that. I think it's just, like I said, every team is so equal and so elite that they need to find little ways to get around these rules to make it work for, to benefit them. And I think that's the case with Raiders. Maybe you disagree. I think they're a really strong team, but kind of like Eels, they don't really have any specific playmakers that are fantastic. Like, they have Bateman and a few players like that who are great players, but they're not going to make that big play like Cooper Cronk or Cam Smith or, Damien Cook, someone like that who's going to blow up the game and win them the game. They're just strong workhorses that have now found this rule that Bateman and Hodgson are fantastic at it, and it's winning them games, and it's potentially won them a number of games just being able to do this.
Oh yeah, no, exactly, 100%. And I think if I think this is the year that the Raiders have to go all in with this squad to win the NRL, and if they do, like you said, it'll be like basically they'll all blacks it. They've just bent the rule book and found the way that they can bend the rules to suit them or like to help them. And obviously the whole comp's done it, but like you said, just elite people just bending the rules to work. And I really feel like if the Raiders are going to win a premiership, it's going to be this year because they can use it. Because like you said, I think what they should do is change it to if 3 people go into a tackle, you can't just have 2 drop off and have it turn into a one-on-one. Like it has to be like a true one-on-one strip. Otherwise, it's just pointless. Because even like you said, turning it over in rugby, the holding the ball against the guy, they've started pinging that now in rugby. They actually changed rules that say that you have to you can't hold it against the player anymore. You have to let him release. Okay. And you either have to step over and try and pick it up, or you have to show that he's actually holding onto it, not just force it against him. So
okay, there you
go. So I feel like the NRL will change it. And yeah, I feel like they should because it just, like you said, it just disrupts the flow too much of the game.
Yep, absolutely. But another point I was going to just quickly bring out that's kind of on topic, but I think you're definitely going to see, like we saw in the State of Origin, a lot less penalties or anything being blown anyway. Because as soon as it becomes to those big games, and I saw it blatantly in State of Origin, because this is what they're told, the refs get told to just let the game go. Even if there's a blatant penalty or anything like that, they just let it go because that's what they've been told. Everyone wants to watch a fast-flowing game where, minimal penalties and you just get to watch footy rather than get pinged back for penalties. And it was penalty after penalty in State of Origin and nothing got called. And we're going to see that in finals again. So it's going to be interesting where these type of rules and stuff come into play, whether they let them go completely or they pull them all back potentially.
And whatever they do, I hope they stick to it, and I hope it's all the refs agree to do it. Either everyone refs every single game that it's loose, or everyone refs every single game that it's tight and refed really hard. Because I feel like another thing too, that's I feel like the refs in NRL should be able to approach it the same way a rugby ref does. And I understand that league is a lot more stop-start than union, but union refs are sort of like I've done a beginners refs coach when I did my beginners coaching course, and they sort of talk about like if you make a mistake against one team, sort of chalk it up in the back of your mind, and when the opposition makes a mistake or anything, just let it go. And obviously it's not anything blatant like if someone knocks it on, but if some guy comes in and clears out from the side and you don't ping it, just keep that in the back of your mind for when the other team makes a mistake and sort of keep it even, Steven. So it's not like one team didn't get penalised for shit the others did.
Yep.
If that makes sense.
Yep. And I think you see that, sorry to cut you off, but you see that very clearly in the NRL at the moment with the whole penalty count. They are definitely told throughout the game what the penalty count is, and they plan on evening it up. You see it so often, the penalty count might be 5-1, and in the final 5 minutes of a half, 100% almost all the time, it ends up being 5-all at halftime. They'll blow 5 quick penalties in succession that gets them the entire way up the field, and another 2 penalties on the line, goes into halftime 5-all. And if anyone looks at the stats, they go, oh, penalty count's even, the ref's having a pretty even game. But it's like, that's not what's happened. The ref has called 5 fair penalties against one team, but then's been told that it's not been even. So they've quickly evened it up to 5-0 penalties for the opposition. That's put them in an attacking zone to potentially score. So that's one thing I don't agree with. But once again, for me, that's coming from higher up. That's not the ref themselves.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I guess people should just accept that, like, again, they're athletes and they're elite athletes, but they're humans and they're going to make mistakes. Like, if the penalty count is 5-1 before it gets near the half, you should accept that your team has been, like, ill-disciplined. Like, just learn to accept that your team's going to fuck up. Even if they're down by 30, it's probably because they messed up. So just let the refs have that uneven penalty count if it's right. Because like you said, all that ends up happening is a team that was far worse, even if they've got less favourable penalties, they'll just get backpacked down to the other side of the field, and then you go into halftime with a 12-4 score when really it should be 16-0. But because they had to even up the penalties, they just end up backpacking the shit. It's usually the worst team because they're the ones that'll give away the penalties anyway. Like, you just end up back, and I guess the head honchos like it that all the games are even and the league seems so competitive, but that's not the case. Like, it's not how it goes in sport. You don't walk away from a game with 2 winners. Like, you might felt like you win, but one person has to take a loss and the other has to take a win, and just accept it and just move on with it. And yeah, the refs just need to be able to get to a position where they feel like they can make mistakes and it not be the end of the world for someone.
Yep, exactly. So I think we'll quickly make a little turnaround and get back to the start. So prediction wise, I think we're both, for Melbourne Canberra, we're both going Melbourne. South Roosters,
sadly.
We're both sadly. All right.
Sorry.
Nah, fair enough. South Roosters, we're both on Roosters for that game. Manly, Cronulla.
Yeah, boys.
I think I'm on Manly for this game. I think they're just the better team on paper. Yep. But I think this is a very 50-50 game, that it's just going to be whoever rocks up and plays better on the day. The classic, whoever wants it more.
Yeah, that one.
But you're the same for that?
Oh, yeah, sorry, yeah. Yeah, 100%. Did you see, actually, just side note, sort of funny one, did you see that the Seagulls, stadium had an asbestos issue, earlier in the week?
They've had to fully clear that up, and they were thinking that it wasn't even going to be played at Lotto Land. I'm not sure if they were going to plan on holding it at Cronulla or at a neutral ground, but it's only got cleared yesterday or the day before that they're allowed to play on the field because of this asbestos issue.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
I seen a Batuta article where it was Seagulls release new merchandise, and it was the full hazmat suit. just in whatever the colour is, maroon or whatever the Seagulls colour is.
Yeah, nice. A badge on the side shows who you're working for. No, that's ridiculous. But no, I don't know how it got there, but safety to all players. Hopefully there's no issues.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah. And then Parramatta Brisbane. You were on Parramatta?
Yeah, I'm going Para, man. I just think Broncos are too inconsistent, and I just feel like just that winger or whoever he is, I feel like he's sort of X factor, and I feel like that's just how the Eels win, is they have one guy with the X factor and he tops it. But yeah, like you said, two inconsistent sides. It could go either way. It could be a shit game or a good game, and we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, I don't know. Personally, for me, I'd probably like to see. I don't love either team, but I'd probably like to see Broncos up just for the sake it was Brisbane over Parramatta. But yeah, I'm on the same page. I think Para's probably going to get up. I don't think Para's going to let Broncos get the better of them, a few weeks in a row. So
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so that's the NRL previews. We'll obviously be able to regather next week and shoot forward for the knockout rounds. But yeah, I think that's where we both stand for the time being.
Yep.
All right, so what are we
100%.
moving on to?
I guess Wallabies got a win on the weekend.
Good to see, not in good fashion.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think we started all right. I mean, like, I don't know. We were drinking and watching it, so we were buzzing. So I can't really remember.
Yeah, no, we actually got to watch this game together, which was nice. But
yeah, it was actually pretty nice.
But yeah, there was beverages consumed left, right, and centre. So it may be a little fuzzy, but I think we can both agree Australia, it certainly wasn't their best day.
No, I don't think it was. I think we went into halftime like 22-5 or 22-3 or something, and then Samoa ended up coming back, and then we scored 2 quick tries in the last 5 minutes when they'd given up, sort of. So, I mean, I guess it is our B team, and a lot of the guys that played aren't picked in the World Cup squad, but I still think it's just iffy. I mean, since it's just the B squad, I really don't care, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's pretty disappointing when you can't completely demolish a team who had a bunch of boys. Like, their whole team was picked of players that come from 6 countries, and a couple of them only rocked up, and they had one training session before the game. So, actually, really good effort from Samoa to keep it that competitive when they'd only been, like, the Wallabies have been training for like 3 months now. Most of those players had been. And for the Samoans to, most of them show up a training session or 2 or 3 days before the game and put in that sort of performance is very hopeful for them for the World Cup. But, I mean, yeah, it's whatever. Just the Wallabies being Wallabies. So
yeah, exactly.
Not much to say there.
It was 22-3 at halftime. So we were kind of bouncing around a few channels. Like, there was the AFL on a few things. So we're just kind of keeping up. But it was 22-3, and we were like, we didn't think we'd play the best, but it was like, at least we're getting a good result. And yeah, like you said, we came back, and at that point it was 22-15, and we were like, what, are Samoa actually going to come back and win this? This is ridiculous. How bad are Wallabies? And yeah, like you said, 2 quick tries in the last 5-10 minutes, and you look back now, final score 34-15, it's like, we got a decent win, that's not bad, but it wasn't the way it went. And we were watching the game, and we both sat there for the first probably 20 minutes, and we'd scored 2 tries at that point, so we were on top of the leaderboard. But our backline looks like so much worse than Samoa's. Like, Samoa's backline was passing it through the hands really well, making some nice cutout balls and getting up the field, where Australia was just running side to side. Like, it was consistently, like, if we were on their 40, would pass it side to side, push back to their 50, then push back up to the 40, and like, we were going nowhere with the ball, where Samoa, if they went through the hands, they were making 30 meters on us, which was just baffling that we were so bad against them in our back line, but we were so bad defensively as well. It's like, no wonder why the All Blacks cut us to pieces when we can't even keep it together against Samoa.
Yeah, exactly.
And like you said, credit for the way Samoa pulled it together and had a really good performance in my eyes. But yeah, it's disappointing to watch. But like you said, it's kind of our B team that went in, and there was no Hooper, who we spoke about last week or the week before and raved on and on about him. And so there was a few key people missing, but it's not like we should be looking any worse than Samoa even with a B team.
Yeah, exactly. And from the reports I've sort of read, I think the forward pack had a pretty good game, but I think it's just disappointing that, like, year after year now, Australia's backline and even the forwards at some point, no one seems keen to want to take it into contact. It seems to be, the next bloke next to, I don't know whether it's an overtrust issue or whether it's people just not wanting to follow the game plan or what it is, but yeah, like you said, you can't we can't keep playing games thinking that if we start at the opposition's 40 and just go hands all the way through everyone's hands to the winger, we're going to make a break, because we're not. Like, you look at the teams that how like New Zealand and even Ireland and those Northern Hemisphere teams are playing now, they have a couple guys hit hard lines, go forward, and then either it's quick passes or pops, and then because you've put the defensive line under pressure from your like forward running, you can manipulate the gaps and make a break that way. But yeah, it's just disappointing that we still are obsessed with throwing the ball left to right in the hope that one person makes a break.
And it just doesn't make any sense either. Like, in all honesty, I don't know what the backs do week in, week out, because it's either the 12 takes a crash ball up or it goes through the hands. Like, there's actually nothing outside of that, which is baffling. Like, I don't know if we agree, but I actually really like our forward pack. Like we said, they're week on, too. Week off. Like, sometimes they don't rock up, sometimes they do. But even overall, I actually think we've got a really good forward pack. It's not the best in the world, but it's a pretty high standard. It's actually our backs that let us down, in my opinion. But I don't think it's necessarily our backs. I think it potentially comes back to the backs coaches, or maybe Chica, who, discussions whether he'll get his another contract or not. But I just think either he or the backs coaches, do they just not have faith? Like, are Australia just not that quality, full stop? Like, yeah, they just have nothing outside of hands and a crash ball.
Yep. See, I really, I agree with you. And I don't know what it is, because a lot of our issue seems to be that the backs don't have plays for general play. Like you said, it's either a crash ball to the offset piece. We are one of the best backlines in the world.
Yep.
Like you only had to look against the game against Argentina that played at Suncorp. One of the backline plays we ran had like a winger coming from the blind side of the scrum. That was a distracting crash ball. We had a 12 run an angle that was another distracting crash ball, and we somehow put this blindside winger through a hole between the two crash balls that we'd been running, and it looked brilliant. But in general play, all our plays are, like you said, throw it to the winger, hands it out to the winger, or crash ball, or Samu Karevi takes it up and runs a crash ball. And I think that's where we get hurt, is because our backs just can't create anything or don't have any plays to drop to on the fly. And that's one of the things that I sort of am planning ahead to coach for, because I'm obviously a backs coach. I sort of think we should just steal from the leagueies, and the forwards in Australia are getting more athletic now. Why don't we just start running sort of league plays where we have a back link up with some forwards and run I don't know, a forward runs an overs line and a back runs an unders line, instead of just fucking handsing it. I feel like we have the principles there from league, and we know that if we get athletic enough forwards, we can run it with the back. So why don't we just steal shit from the sport that we are the best in the world at? And the Waratahs train at the same field as the Roosters, or they're near the Roosters, they're near the Rabbits. There is so much potential that we could do cross sport, just getting coaches in to help, and yet we still, season after season, look great off set piece, but look fucking horrible in general play.
Yeah.
I don't know what you feel about it, but
no,
that's just what I think.
I completely agree. Every single time, it's so predictable. It's going to be hands either out to the outside centre and he'll take a crash ball, or he'll push it to the winger and the winger will cut in, and, so he's not isolated. But I don't know. It's a pretty simple answer. But Ethan, would you rather get, the opposition run hands to you, or, maybe throw in a cutout ball or an over-unders, or, any play whatsoever rather than hands? Personally, I'd rather them throw hands, because I know where it's going to the next person and we can just slide defense. That's the simple defense. You can just slide. There's no crossover of players. You're not getting tricked with which man you're going to take, and that's how it happens. If there's a crossover or an inside ball or whatever, you'll have two defenders taking the same player. It opens it up for someone else. But when you just push hands, everyone just slides, and there's no difficulty in that. It's predictable, and that's why we get nowhere with it. Genuinely nowhere. We don't even make 10 meters each time we do it.
Yeah, exactly.
We're either staying at the same point or going backwards.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of the time we do make hands off, or make meters off hands. It's because one guy is super athletic and just uses his athleticism to beat it. like you said, I'd rather, as a defensive, if I was coaching defensively or I was defending as a player, I'd rather defend hands all day because there's no, like, I don't have to think. I just follow my man. Like you said, I slide across to the left or the right. When you start deceiving teams and running like crash balls or like unders routes, that like it fatigue gets to players, and that's all rugby is like making a guy or like, and this is why I love the NFL, because you'll have coaches who might sacrifice a few downs early in the game, making players think what their other player is going to do. And then suddenly this guy who's just faked like a curl route or faked an out route suddenly does the shift to go to a out route. And then the corner bites that thinking that he's like, oh yeah, I've seen this 3 or 4 times. And then suddenly that wide receiver just turns and blasts down the field.
Yep.
That's what I love. And we don't have any of that in Aussie rugby.
No, not at all.
Like we don't have anyone trying to deceive and make players think the whole game. And that's just what the All Blacks do to you, is they make you think all game. And when you're down 12 with 10 minutes left on the clock and you've been thinking and you've been given everything you've got, running hands, getting nowhere, and then suddenly the All Blacks run an overs line and you just lose your man because you're fatigued, and they run in and score 2 tries, it's demoralising as a fan, and obviously I'm guessing as a player to play under. We just need to get more creative. And like you said, it's definitely a trust issue. I just think coaches think that they're way more elite than their players and that they can't run this, or that we've got 12 weeks to build into this, and then mistakes happen, and then they're like, oh, we'll introduce it next week, and then suddenly...
We'll go back to basics.
Yeah, and then we get to finals and all we're running is fucking hands and we get exposed because we're shit. So
yeah, and like you're saying with the NFL, I completely agree. Like, you take the Chiefs offense, who are the best offense in the league currently. You have Tyreek, you have McCole Hardman and Sammy Watkins, who are some of the fastest players in the league, full stop. You have the first half, they pretty much just run deep routes. And I think the Ravens are starting to go there now. And Ravens are actually a really interesting team, but we can talk about that later. It's a lot of, they run straight up deep routes. And then all of a sudden, the defense just goes, hey, they've beaten us, once or twice on these deep routes and we're giving away huge yardage. We need to go, let's say, zone coverage to counter it and make sure we're not giving up these deep plays. And that's when all of a sudden Tyreek starts to run forward. They go, oh, he's going for another deep run. And he just runs a quick slant, makes the easiest 10, 15 yards, and then can make his, run after catch.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's where, it's not a big play in the scheme of things. You're not making 50 yards off it necessarily. Tyreek can do that as well. But it just throws the entire game out. You go from them going man-to-man and getting beaten to then going, well, we need to go zone, and then they just change up the offense, and, you start throwing balls to Kelsey, and he's open all day and makes 20 yards each run. So, obviously, it's a different game, but it's that type of thing. We need to be switching it up as we play. Even if it was like, hey, we're going to run hands the entire first half. If they did this, I wouldn't be mad. If they went, we're going to run hands and crash balls the entire first half, and then the second half we come out and be creative, you know what? You'd probably score 2 pretty quick tries early in that half, because the opposition just goes, they walk into the locker room and the coaches go, they've ran nothing but crash balls and hands all day. That's what we're ready for. We're just going to slide. We're just going to stick with our man, and that's going to be it. All of a sudden, a dummy's thrown, cut out ball to the winger. The opposition winger, the entire defense has been drawn in. The winger doesn't expect it yet, and, you're potentially making ground on the outside. Whatever the scenario is, you throw a spanner in the works and you change things up rather than continue to play the same thing. But not just the same thing, the most basic, simple form of rugby that you teach under 5s.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
These are meant to be elite players, not people who are new to the game.
Yeah,
but,
exactly.
Yeah, I think that's where we stand at Australian rugby.
Yeah, it is. And I think, like you said, it just comes back to the fact that coaches, just backs coaches or anyone who's planning attack, just plans for the set piece. They say, oh, here's a play off scrum. Here's a play that will run off lineouts. It's well, we need other plays to run. We can't just plan for scrums and lineouts, because that's the last thing you want. The last thing you want is your forwards having to run lineouts and scrums all game, because then it just tires them out. And even though it's helping your backs, now your forwards are bugging and they can't come to support. You turn it over in the backs. And yeah, I just think as a coach, it is easier to offensively or attackingly react than it is to defensively react. Because like you said, you can manipulate an attack so much easier, and then the defense is just left there like, well, they weren't meant to do that. Everything we've seen, they weren't meant to do that. And then that puts you in a fluster and it gets you off your game. But yeah, like you said, we're in the right. We are in the exact same spot with how we feel about Aussie rugby. We just need to be more creative.
Yep, absolutely.
That's my thinking anyway.
But I guess, you know what? Even if they came out 3 weeks' time well, not even 3 weeks' time, it's just over a week until the World Cup starts. If we came out and first game we ran excellent balls and so on and so forth, and Cheeky came out and was like, yeah, we actually saved this for the World Cup, I'd be completely down. I'd be like, you know what? I respect that. We went out playing simple footy, just getting the grip, seeing other teams, just getting used to working together, and we saved it for the World Cup. I can completely understand that, but I don't think it's the case. I just think we're not at that level, whether it's coaching or playing. Like, we're just not going to do that. But we got a bit over a week still to get this right before the World Cup. We have a relatively easy group that we shouldn't have an issue getting out of.
No, I don't think we should.
In my eyes, we should be winning it. Like, Wales is the only challenge, but, you know, hopefully...
Are they in our pool again?
Yeah. So, for anyone who doesn't know, our pool is Fiji, Georgia, Uruguay, and Wales.
Oh, wow. I didn't know Wales was in it. But yeah. It's a pretty... Wales has, like you said, Wales has sort of dipped a bit this year, and Fiji's exciting, but yeah, the rest of it
they're sevens. They're not 15 aside. Georgia and Uruguay, like, aren't great teams. Like, if we're losing to them, we have way bigger concerns than what we thought.
If we lose to Georgia or Uruguay at the World Cup, Checker should be fired after that game. I don't give a shit if we're halfway through a tournament. If we lose to Georgia or Uruguay, Michael Checker should be fired.
Or
because
Fiji.
If you can't game plan... I mean, I'd sort of understand Fiji because at the same time that they are just a sevens unit, they are exciting. And obviously Radradra and a few of the old sevens boys from Fiji have now turned to 15 aside and they're killing it in France, I guess. But I mean, at the same time, Fiji also had to send home a strength and conditioning coach and like their attack coach before the World Cup because they didn't have the budget to keep paying them. So, I mean, at the same time that I would accept it, I also would be disgusted. So, I mean, yeah, it's just iffy, but like if we lose to Uruguay or Georgia, Michael Checker should be on the next flight home.
Yeah, I'm
just send the whole squad home too and bring in Randwick or some shit, someone that actually like, because if we lose to those two teams, it's not going to be because we played worse. It's just going to be because we didn't put in the effort and no one wanted to win. And I won't tolerate that shit.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, like we said, we got just over a week to get this right. If we don't, a lot of people can say goodbye to their jobs and so on.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think that's enough union talk. We'll get on to the previews and recap of the NFL situation.
Yeah.
Super great to have NFL back, both fantasy and regular season. It's just a relief. Like, for both you and I, we've been waiting, because the season's so short, we've been waiting so long for this to come back.
Yeah.
It's just a huge sigh of relief. Like, NFL's back, finally.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
There was one thing I actually wanted to bring up before we got into it. Mr. Antonio Brown.
So, man, we're going to go here?
Just quickly, I think, first of all, you know, we made mention of Andrew Luck. You know, we made a post about him. Congratulations on their retirement. Really sucks to see him go. But respectful decision. And we brought that up on the podcast, so I thought it was only fair. You know, what was it? A few nights ago, we posted Antonio Brown had signed for the Patriots after this crazy off-season shenanigans. He'd signed for Patriots out of nowhere. But there's been more news released. But we'll quickly just run through the whole scenario. So, Ethan, if you'd like to run us through start to finish, kind of him leaving Pittsburgh to the most recent unfold.
Oh, man. Okay, just so everyone knows, I might miss a few details, but that is because the document that I have summarizing Antonio Brown's issues is over 1,000 words. This is a uni assignment of shit that he's done. So I'll start with what Brock said right from the start. Antonio Brown's happily playing on the Steelers, and then he decides that he doesn't want to be there anymore because he wants to get more guaranteed money, and the Steelers don't have the cap space to do that. So he forces his way out of the Steelers via a trade. He lands in Oakland. He lands with the Raiders. The first thing he does is he burns his feet in a cryogenic chamber by not wearing the right footwear. So he has to sit out days of the OTAs and then the start of preseason camp.
Well, he missed almost the entire training camp. And then only came in for practices later. But yeah, continue.
I'll just make that note too. So in the NFL, there's so many different camps. There's rookie camp, which is where they get... So rookie camp is really... It's obviously the rookies. So whoever got drafted that year, they come in like... I think 4 weeks before preseason camp starts, and usually the quarterbacks come in too, so that if there's a new coach or anything, they can get accustomed with the new players. And then there's OTAs, which is optional, and then that's really for the guys. This is when the guys who start needing roster spots show up, but other people like your stars don't normally show up for this. Then obviously there's training camp, which I think is mainly, I think it's conditioning and stuff they might do there.
Yeah.
It's like a week or 3 or 4 days before, and then the players get a break over the weekend before preseason camp starts, which is like 4 weeks. So Antonio burnt his feet, I think it was around OTAs or something.
Yep.
He missed most of training camp, like Brock said, and then it went into preseason camp. Once his feet got healed, he then started dealing with a helmet issue. The NFL said that his 10-year-old helmet couldn't be worn anymore because it had failed safety checks. So he filed a grievance against the NFL for the first time. It got rejected. He then threatened to retire and said that like the Raiders weren't fighting enough for him or whatever when they were right there with him appealing. He got rejected a second time. I think he filed a third grievance, but I don't think they got an issue on it because by then this dragged on for a week.
Yep.
I think it was 10 days. It felt like forever while preseason was going on. And then what was it after that?
He found a helmet finally. And he proudly put that on his Instagram that he signed with a new helmet dealership.
Yeah. So after taking a couple weeks to do that, the next shit just sort of happened like within 1 or 2 days of each other. I think what happened after that was he had words with... Mike the Raiders GM.
Yep.
Yeah, Mike Mayock said something in the press conference about now that Antonio had got his helmet and healed his feet, he needed to show up and play. And then Antonio started posting shit on Instagram. What did he do? He said, the Raiders can't hold him down. And then he got fined for not showing up to practice because he was skipping walkthroughs and stuff.
And then, so he missed training camp and the walkthroughs and got fined for it.
Yeah.
And might I add, anyone who does that does get fined for that. It's not like this was a one-off scenario where they'll just like, you know what, we're going to get at Antonio Brown for no reason. Like, he's on, what was his contract? Was it 16 million, around that area anyway, and he got fined.
He was making I think he made 30 million
I think
guaranteed this year. He would have had.
So it was over a couple of years, but he was going to get 30 million this year.
Yep.
But he went through and like they got fined, what was it? It was like 70 grand all up or something. Maybe I'm wrong, but it was a low figure. Like he would have had no issues paying it off, but it wasn't. So then the scenario, he decided to take this to his Instagram page and online.
And then, he just basically complained about that. And then Mike Mayock come out and said something again. And then he got into a verbal engagement with Mike Mayock at practice, I think. And then it sort of quietened it down for a few days. I thought he was going to come back to the team. And then he posted a photo of another fine that he'd got. This one was for 200 grand because of, like, obviously everything he'd done in the off season. And then because he'd got multiple fines, that voided his contract, which removed all his guaranteed money, which is what everyone thinks he wanted. So he started posting. He posted a phone call with the head coach. He then got into another argument with Mike Mayock. And basically he then posted on social media saying, "Release me, I want to be free."
Well, so no, okay, sorry. I just want to go back. You missed a step where he actually apologized for it. Like after the whole scenario where he had a verbal disagreement and was like yelling at Mike Mayock, he apologized. He was like, came out in a press conference, was like, "I'm really sorry for what I've done," so on and so forth. Then, like you said, he then posted a call with John Gruden, the head coach, and was like, they were both pretty much just like, he was like, "I'm going to sort my crap out." And John Gruden was like, "You need to do that. You need to sort this out immediately, but I'm all for you. Like, I'm here to support you. We're going to get through this. We're going to have a great year, essentially."
Yeah.
And then, after that, Raiders decided that they were going to void his contract because, he was just causing trouble left, right, and center. So the guaranteed money was wiped away. And then, he came out with the whole release me.
Yeah. And anyway, the Raiders ended up just releasing him because they were only paying him week to week now. And he signed for the Patriots. And yeah, basically over the past few days, a couple more, like apparently he had consulted a social media expert on
Yeah.
like how he should drum up interest, or I don't know, it's sort of all tinged, but he did go to a social media expert and get the video with Gruden professionally made up. And people are sort of saying that he did all this because he knew that it would get him released from the Raiders and then he could just go join a better team that the Steelers wouldn't trade him to in the first place. But it's just a mess. And I know I've probably messed stuff, but I mean, do you blame me? There's like 15 different things he did.
It's ridiculous.
It's just stupid.
But yeah, like I'll just quickly, just anything, you've probably said it, but in case there was anything. Yep, so got voided, he asked for the release, and then he got released. He then posted that video online of him running around in the backyard, flapping his arms like a bird, going, I've been released, I'm free finally. Like, he's come out, posted this on his Instagram. I'm actually having a look now, I think he's taken it off. So
yeah, it was just a drum up talk.
And so he's done that. He got released, I think it was 11 o'clock that morning. I'm not sure how this works, but I think there must be a 5-hour span where he can't talk to anyone at all. So 4 o'clock he was allowed to talk to, different teams. 4:15 he was signed for the Patriots. So immediately he was signed. And since then it's just been post after post on his Instagram, tagging Tom Brady, tagging Julian Edelman, saying, business is booming, my ride is here to Foxborough, that type of stuff. And it's ridiculous. And so conspiracy theory wise, so I think we've got everything out of the way of what happened. But like you started to talk about, there's actually conspiracy theories going around that he always wanted to go to the Patriots. But Steelers and Patriots, it certainly didn't look like it on the weekend, but have relatively strong rivalry. Of Steelers are one of the few teams that could challenge Patriots long term, but Steelers are like kind of the little brother and are scared of Patriots, so they were never going to trade anyone to the Patriots. So there's actually talk that AB has done everything from start to finish so he could get to the Patriots, which I don't know where you stand, and I'd like to get your opinion, but I think he's just actually crazy, and he's got insanely lucky to end up here.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the thing that sort of comes up with a lot of this is sometimes this is sort of, it tends to be that the media will attack black athletes more and call them divas and stuff. And at the start of all of this issue, I was a bit skeptical and I thought that the media was just looking to make an enemy since obviously they'd taken a lot of their issues with OBJ recently, but since he'd gone to Cleveland and been completely quiet all off season, I thought they were just trying to drum up something that wasn't talking about, I don't know, some 5th ranked middle linebacker on the bloody Rams like roster getting cut. I thought that they were just trying to drum it up, but the more and more it dragged on and the longer this has gone on, I just think like it's ridiculous, and he is crazy. I think he has to be insane because if this was an act to get to the Patriots, I think it would have stopped after he got released from the Raiders. I don't think he would have released that video flapping around, and I don't think he'd keep posting, rubbing it in that he's at the Patriots now. I think he would have just, turned off the act and said, yeah, I'm here to work. I got where I want to be. Now I just go back to, because he's not that really, back when he was with the Steelers, he wasn't that active. He just posted when he needed to, obviously when he was advised to by whoever runs his marketing. But like this offseason has been insane. It's like every 1 or 2 days he posts stuff, and it's not just shit. Like he posts actual stuff that has implications. And I mean, yeah, I just got sick of it. Like I was keen to see him on the Raiders, but I'm not defending him anymore because obviously he's gone to this is a win-win for the Pats. The Pats, if they lose AB or have to cut him, or they it's actually pretty funny. Someone said there's no way that the Pats cut AB. If he starts playing up, all they'll do is stick him on injury reserve and no one will hear from him until next season.
Yep.
Which I think is hilarious because that's just such a Bill Belichick thing.
Yep. Get
like one of the best receivers in football and then everyone thinks if he messes up, you're going to cut him. But no, they'll just put him on injury reserve with a head injury. And the only way he gets out of that is if he sues them, but he won't win because he's trying to sue a team when they're protecting him and shit. So,
yep.
I mean, it's a win-win for the Pats. They have already have an elite offense. They have an elite defense. They have the best coach in football right now, like the greatest ever. That I think we've sort of agreed on that in the past.
Yeah, for sure.
They sign a guy who only makes them better. If he doesn't play, they're fine. They didn't have to trade for him. They lost nothing. And like, it's a win-win for the Pats, and it's so unfair because the best team in football gets better again.
Yep.
And
Patriots,
I don't know if sorry to cut you off, but I don't know if I answered your question. I sort of went on a bit of a tangent, but yeah, like, well, what do you think about it all?
Yeah. Oh, exactly that. It's the Patriots. We just watched them demolish and absolutely embarrass the Steelers completely and utterly. And that was without Antonio Brown, who I think we can both agree is like top 3 wide receiver in the league.
Oh, for sure. 100%.
So that's ridiculous. But it proves that, like you said, they can stick him on the injury roster if they feel like it, because that means no one else is able to sign him, and they don't really need him. They dominated one of the like top 10 teams, arguably, in the NFL with ease without him. So they don't have a desperate need. Like, they've already got Josh Gordon back. Julian Edelman's still fantastic. And like, they drafted in Kill Harry, but he's injured. But even like, you know, there was a few other, I can't remember the names off the top of my head, but like wide receivers who aren't great, who had outstanding games for them. So they're not desperate for it at all. But, and then, are we going to make mention of the most recent outbreak from Antonio Brown, or will we leave that for...
I think we should, because it seems to be pretty detailed what's come out. Yeah. So I think it's pretty genuine.
Flow-on effect, I guess.
Yeah, you are talking about how today there's been reports come out that he's going to be sued for the potential rape and harassment of his ex-media manager or something.
She was his fitness coach, I believe.
Oh, fitness coach, my bad. Yeah, sorry, my bad.
Yep. So I think they had a history of, I think they both were at the same church or so on. Like, they both share the same religions and were partners in whatever, a Bible study class. And then they fell apart. In 2017, they found each other again, like reconnected, and was like, hey, how about you come train me? She's a gymnast. So he was like, how about you come train me? I can work on my flexibility, so on and so forth. I'm not going to get into detail of what happened, but there was kind of like 2 low-level acts from him, and then there was like the rape, but he sexually assaulted her twice and then allegedly raped her on the third situation. So it, obviously you don't want to spread this if it's false, but there's a lot of detail coming out about it. So we're still kind of, so far Antonio Brown's come out and said that, it's obviously false. So hopefully that's the case, but yeah, it's just this flow-on effect that it hasn't stopped. We thought it'd finally stop once he came to the Pats, but it's going to be interesting to see what happened. Like, could Pats just pull the pin and just get rid of him?
I don't know. I really don't know, because see, like, you look at even the Tyreek and the Kareem Hunt issues and stuff with what they went through. The Chiefs obviously traded, or they obviously cut Kareem, but NFL teams seem to hold on to players until it's through and through, and then they'll cut them. But also, I think the Pats might have to act a little bit earlier than they want to on this issue, because Antonio Brown has basically burnt his public image in the court of public opinion. Like, I'm pretty sure everyone who's not a diehard Antonio Brown fan, I think the only fan base that likes him is the Pats, and that's because they've got him. I think if all this comes out to be true, they'll turn on him, and then I think AB just is viewed as, for lack of a better word, a fuckhead by everyone now because of how he's carried on.
He's an absolute clown, and that's what he's referred to as now, and he continues to show it. Yeah,
and obviously this statement is a bit controversial from me, but I mean, I don't mean it in a bad way. When a lot of these sort of rape claims come out against athletes, it sort of just seems to be that, and then it gets dealt with in the court, and I completely agree with that. Like, I don't expect a victim to state what happened, but the thing that got me about this, instead of it just seeming like a good opportunity for someone to make a buck, like, this come out with a lot of details that were very graphic, and I was absolutely disgusted by what it was. And then obviously his legal advice has come out and said back that obviously, like, she asked for money and he invested it, or she asked for 1.6 million and he found out what she was actually going to spend it on, and then he didn't want to invest, and now apparently she's been brewing this. But I think like there's just that many details about it that it really is iffy to me. And I mean, obviously not to devalue anyone else that's come out previously, but this is just, it's a lot and it's graphic. And yeah, I don't know. I don't want to say he's guilty, but it's a lot of shit. And normally when there's a lot of details come out this early, it is leaning that way.
Yeah, it's not a situation. And like you said, you don't want to take sides, but it seems to be this way of, it's not like in most circumstances, it's just like, he raped me, like he sexually assaulted me without my consent, so on and so forth. That's kind of as much as it goes into. Like I said, there's the third case where that was allegedly the case, but the first two cases of what he did and like their sexual assault, not rape, it's like you said, it's graphic and it's not what you typically think from this scenario where a chick's just trying to get money. Like if you guys want to know what it is, go look it up. It's everywhere. And it's actually just like I don't know, lack of a better term, it's like a dog move. Like it's actually just disgusting what he did.
Yeah, it is.
But yeah, I think we move on from that. It's just, I think we just kind of brought it up, not because we want to, but it's just the continuation of drama that's come from Antonio Brown this offseason.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
But, hopefully everything works out for him, but he's an absolute clown. So,
exactly.
You certainly can't take his side anymore.
No, I can't back him up, and I won't be. I sort of, like I said, I'd only been backing him up because he was going to go to the Raiders, and I was hoping that they'd have a comeback season, but now, he's just hung out to dry. He's just carried on like a pork chop too long. I can't even side with it and say it's his personality or how much he loves the sport. It's just him being a genuine dickhead.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so I think we move on to the NFL and look back through. I think we're just, running out of time a little bit. So we're not going to make mention of every single game, but what were a few of the standout games that you watched and, definitely you think reflected on what is to come?
Well, I actually thought it was just overall, I thought it was a very surprising first week. I really liked the Saints-Texans game.
Oh, it was an unbelievable game. Definitely game of the week.
Yeah, I think it was, obviously, I think it was a game of two halves. I think Texans had it by a mile in the first half. And I think that the Saints come out and really won it in the second half. I don't think they won it. I don't think their performance in the second half was as convincing as what the Texans was in the first half, if that makes sense.
No, definitely not.
But, I mean, obviously they come back. But I feel like the Texans, and then obviously I watched the Browns game, and the Browns, like, these are two teams that their season rests on how they win in the trenches. Obviously, the Browns O-line completely collapsed and messed with Baker. And
it was awful.
It was awful. It was a terrible performance from the Browns, but that was just purely because their starting left tackle on a very weak offensive line got ejected, and then their backup left tackle got injured, and then they were playing a defensive lineman in the O-line just to have enough people. Like that really, the Browns thing rests on how well their O-line does, and it's the same with the Texans because I feel like the Texans' defensive line in the first half had it all over the Saints, and then they took until there was 3 minutes left in the fourth quarter to wake back up, and when they did, they had a lot more pressure on Drew Brees, and it was just insane that Brees still made plays around that. But I definitely think that like the Texans and the Browns, how far they want to go this season rests on how they go in the trenches, how they go on the O-line and the D-line. But obviously, what do you think about it all this week?
For sure, I completely agree with that, and honestly, by the predictions, I don't like Browns, but I was pretty high on Browns. But after this week and seeing how poor their offensive line is, Baker Mayfield, who we both really like, threw 3 interceptions against the Tennessee Titans. Like, they lost by 30 points. Like, it was an absolute obliteration where I think we both chalked in this was going to be a pretty easy win for the Browns. Like, I'm potentially considering, and I don't think you will agree, but there's consideration for me that they dropped from like a 10-6 team to potentially like 7-9.
Oh,
like I actually potentially consider they might only go 0.5 this season. Like it's going to be 8-8. Like this is one of those games that I had them with an easy victory, but they're getting dominated. Like it's going to be really interesting next week when it's Jets and Browns, who Browns got dominated. Jets came with a tight loss that they threw away, who actually gets the win. It's going to be, and I think it's a Monday night football game. So it's a highlight game. It's actually going to be really interesting to watch. But yeah, I definitely agree. It's like you said, it's in the trenches. But Texans surprised me, like considering how much they've traded away. Like Jadeveon Clowney left, and a few really key players in their defense left. They were really good. Like I actually was very surprised by their defense, and if they can keep that defense through the season, they're going to win a lot of games. Their only issue, in my eyes, was Tunsil, who they just traded for, is their new left tackle. But he's only been in the squad for like 5 days. Like he's been in the squad for less than a week. You can expect him to make mistakes. And the only time the offensive line crumbled was through him. So I think you give him another week or two, that hole is filled, and Deshaun Watson is going to have the time of his life. And that sack count is going to come right down. He's going to have no issues at all. But in my opinion, the Texans played so much better than the Saints, and I really enjoyed watching this game. But it was just Breeze and Sean Payton, clutchness per usual, and an outstanding performance by Alvin Kamara per usual. Like, I think they're all fantastic and hardly beatable.
And you want to know what happened again? Yet again, you have an electric QB and an electric receiver, and they come out and they take over the game, and it costs them. Like we've seen last year with Pat Mahomes and Tyreek Hill against the Pats. Deshaun comes out, he takes 2 throws with 50 seconds left on the clock to score a TD that puts him up, and then Breeze and stuff come out, and obviously the Texans secondary fell off a fucking cliff in the second half.
That last play though was so poor. Like, I know this is probably conversation for just Ethan and I, and a lot of you may not understand, but hopefully you guys can. They shouldn't have played zone coverage there. Like, that was stupid. Breeze needed an easy 10 yards to set up that field goal. They're sorted. They play man-to-man, put some pressure on Breeze. He either doesn't make a pass or gets less than 5 yards, and that kicker can't make that kick. Like, no doubt about it.
Exactly.
He misses that kick, in my opinion. Like, he only just made it as is. I think he misses it, and Texans win the game. So that was such a poor one play of poor defending by Texans, and I think it lost them the game. Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, have you seen that they released a cornerback because of it? Like a veteran that they had on decently big money. I haven't actually
seen that.
He Carlos Velucci, I don't know who he is. He come from the Jags last year. He blew a couple of assignments. I think he was responsible for, I think it was the Kamara touchdown in the third quarter. He just he lost a few assignments. But yeah, like you said, like you look at how bad Breeze had been when they were in man-to-man and how good, like and how much pressure, like when the Texans...
had so much pressure on him.
Yeah, and the Texans D-line had woken up by that point. They had a shit ton of pressure on him. And you look at how he'd been when he had pressure from the D-line. He was forced to scramble out of the pocket and they were playing man-to-man. He threw a pick. Like, you can't play zone there. You have to put pressure on Breeze and just have to try. Like, what's the worst that's going to happen? Breeze dials up and throws 30 yards for Thomas to go over and score. Like, they're still only, if they get the conversion, they're only up by 4. And, I mean, Deshaun Watson just walked out with 50 seconds left and threw 2 TDs. Even if you get the ball back there, like, it's worth the risk. Like, you either make Breeze make a play and it doesn't pay off, or you win the game.
Because
and I just, like you said, they shouldn't have played zone.
That final play, if Breeze throws a 30-yard pass because they're in man-to-man and Michael Thomas makes an excellent run, it doesn't matter. Like, it's equal. It just means they're setting up a field goal and they have a higher chance of making that field goal closer. But if you give them that 10 yards, it doesn't matter. They're more than likely going to have a good chance at making the field goal anyway. So I think that was a big mess up by the defense, but it was a great game too. Like, overall, fantastic game.
It was. It was.
A few just kind of quick mentions. I watched the Oakland-Denver game.
Oh, me
Raiders
too, man.
looked really good. I think it's more so Broncos
insane.
looked awful. Broncos...
Yeah.
Signing Joe Flacco was the worst idea. Joe Flacco is an overrated, awful quarterback. He had one good year where he won the Super Bowl, got Super Bowl MVP, and that was his rookie year, I think. Credit to the lad. He's trash now. Like,
Yeah.
I think we discussed this before the podcast. I think he's the worst quarterback in the league.
Yeah, I think he is.
He's definitely
I
making
really
a good
think he
case
is.
for himself anyway.
I think Joe Flacco suffers from the issue of he come in and he sort of the NFL has changed around him, but he's sort of because he did what he did so early in his career, he's got more chances or got a favorable rather than
Yeah.
green, like more because he's kept winning. But he doesn't have movement out of the pocket, which is what so many good quarterbacks have now, is the ability to extend plays. He doesn't have that, and I mean, I thought he was all right. I didn't think he was great. But I mean, like, I really think the Raiders' defensive line put a lot of pressure on, and I was surprised by that.
Yep.
They really seemed to blast. And I don't even think it was the Broncos' O-line collapsing. I just genuinely think that this, like, defensive front of the Raiders is actually pretty decent. I mean, we'll obviously stand to see. I think they've got, I'm just looking now, they've got Kansas next week. So we'll stand to see if it's more legit than what it might be. But, I mean, I was just impressed by how physical their defense was. And you're going to get that with a Gruden defense, but I mean, it was, yeah, like you said, it was a great game to watch, and I think they definitely benefited off Flacco being terrible in the modern NFL.
I think, like you said, the physicality in that defense was exceptional. Like, I wasn't sure how Jonathan Abrams was going to go, but his first game, he looked insane. The issue is the Raiders are going to give up a few penalties here and there because of their physicality.
Yeah.
But that man-to-man like Jonathan Abrams had was unreal.
Did you see that? Sorry to interrupt. Did you see that play where it was like a third down or something, or like a second or third down, and the Broncos dialed up a nice play? It was like a 25-yard pass, and Abrams hit the dude that hard, like he was meant to catch it well within the ground, but Abrams hit him that hard while he was in the air that he caught it out of bounds.
Yeah.
Like Abrams smashed him, and did you see his face mask after he hit everyone that hard? He bent his face mask.
I missed that, but I think once again that was a little bit to do with Flacco. It was a bit too high of a ball, but he snapped him, and it was a really good play from him once again. And Colin Farrell, I don't think he's worth the pick they got him at, but he was good. He gave away a penalty, which, is discipline, but it's his first game in the NFL, so we can only see improvements. But, I was just impressed all around. And Derek Carr was fantastic. Terrell Williams was fantastic. I just got to give him props all around.
That Terrell Williams TD that he threw, Derek Carr threw it straight through a really tight window, like over the Broncos linebackers' hands and just past where the corner could reach it and knock it out of Tyrell Williams' hands. That was a perfectly thrown ball, like real early. I think it was their first TD, if you remember it.
Yeah.
A real tough throw. Yeah. Derek Carr actually surprised me, and Josh Jacobs too. He seemed to warm up as the game went on, and it was insane.
He didn't make any insane runs, but he did exactly what he had to. Like, he got 2 touchdowns. Like, he was important on some of those third downs. Like, it was actually good to see that all their first round picks were coming in clutch the way they needed to. Like, I didn't think that was going to come so early, but they've done well. Yeah. Just a quick mentions. I watched the Green Bay Chicago Bears game. Anyone wants to go watch that? Don't. Boring as hell. My summary of it, and I think you can agree, is Chicago Bears defense is amazing. Chicago's offense and Mitch Trubisky suck. And I think that's going to be the story all season.
Yeah, I missed the game because I think I was shopping on Friday, but I mean, I'll take your word for it. That seems to be what's been going on online, is that if Mitch Trubisky doesn't sort shit out, then the Bears are going to be in trouble.
And it's just
because they haven't. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, go for it.
Sorry to cut you off, but they have an all-time defense. Like, this is they could win a Super Bowl off the back of this defense. But I mean, if Trubisky doesn't show up, they're not going to go anywhere because you need to score points anyway.
And it's sad that that the players that came after Mitch Trubisky were Deshaun Watson, who was fantastic against the Saints, is unbelievable, and Patrick Mahomes went after. So I feel sorry just for Bears fans that have to sit back and go, there's 2 quarterbacks who, I think they have either of those quarterbacks, they're arguably winning the Super Bowl almost without question this year.
Oh, yeah.
With that defense, you just see another Legion of Boom with the Seattle Seahawks, where Russell Wilson came in his rookie year and won the Super Bowl with him. Or, Joe Flacco with how good the Ravens defense was. Like, it's that scenario. But, they need to sort it out, but I don't think they're going to. And then Ravens 59-10 against Miami Dolphins. And since that game, Miami Dolphins left, right, and center have apparently been contacting their agents and contacting the Dolphins saying, we want to get traded after an obliteration like that. And I don't know what you can do as the Dolphins, but Ravens looked really good, but they normally do opening week, and we'll see if it evens out. And but they have a good run the next couple games, I'm pretty sure. Like, they have... Sorry, I'm just trying to find it.
I know they've got the Cardinals next week.
Yeah, they got Cardinals next week, and then I think it's the Chiefs, so that should be a pretty interesting game. But yeah, we'll see how that goes. All around, I think it was a lot of games you went the right way. Although I think probably the best one to finish on for the time being, Cowboys looked fantastic.
Oh man, they did. I mean, it was so nice to see Dak in an offense where it wasn't predictable. Like, it wasn't like, we're running for the first 2 plays, and then Dak, sorry, it's 3rd and long because everyone knows what we're doing. You've got to throw this hard, like we spoke about. Like, they let Dak warm up, and they balanced it. They got our runners warm enough that they could be useful in packages and be useful, like, out of the backfield, and then also useful running. But, man, some of Dak's throws, like... I mean, wow, if he keeps this up, he deserves whatever contract he gets, because some of the throws he made deep, where previously his window was sort of overblown, like he couldn't make that sort of pass. Like the passes downfield to Michael Gallup, really, like that's going to be what we need to unlock Michael Gallup. And obviously if Dak can throw that deep ball, that just makes it so much more dangerous because it opens up Gallup way more. And I mean, you pair that with Amari, you pair that with Zeke, like, man, I was so impressed with the Cowboys. And actually, I'm going to say... Sorry, you go.
You get Randall Cobb, who's playing well, and like you said, Gallup on those deep balls. Amari always making the space he does. It gives you great intermediate and short routes with Cobb and Amari Cooper, and great deep routes with Gallup, while you've still got Ezekiel Elliott, who rocked up for the first week.
Yeah,
playing the way he will, and he'll get better as weeks go on because obviously he hasn't had a proper training. But Dak was just magnificent, and I think you're in a scenario of Jerry Jones has screwed up contract-wise. He's going to be forced to maybe even spend $40 million or so on Dak Prescott, which I don't think he deserves, but he's looking that way, and he's not going to have the money for like Amari Cooper and the other players that need to get signed. But that's a future problem for the time being. But everyone just looked great. The defense looked great. It was fantastic all around by the Cowboys.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'll just make a couple points. Obviously, what you just said. My hope sort of is that this Cowboys team continues to do well enough that Jerry Jones can negotiate contracts where their market value for those two, but if they make the Super Bowl, which if they keep playing at this level is very possible, like I don't think I'm overreaching there. I think if this Dallas team keeps playing the way they did and the defense gets a bit better, they were a bit lukewarm on Monday, but I think if like the defense warms up a bit and Dak and stuff keep playing, this is a Super Bowl team. And if we can get contracts where we only have to pay them market value, but the incentives are insane, I think Jerry Jones pulls the trigger and is happy to take the fact that he might have to pay out $40 million in bonuses if we make the Super Bowl, but
you're making
like we get these guys at market value. Yeah. And I just another thing I wanted to say, I sort of have lost what I was going to say. Oh yeah, Amari is like, I think Amari might be my favorite wide receiver in the league right now.
Wow.
Like I just love the way he, like, just to watch him, a guy of his size who just takes like a stutter step to the right and then bursts off the line and has like 3 yards of separation on some of the best corners. Like obviously the Giants aren't, but just the way that he can do what he does is so insane for me. And the fact that obviously it's a redemption story since he come over from Oakland. Like, and he's a Texas boy, went to college in Texas, went to Oakland, was away from home, sort of suffered because of that, suffered at a shit team. You know, I thought we overpaid for him, and then he comes in and has that game where he had like 200 yards and caught a deep ball and went 90 yards or something. Like, I love Amari right now. I'm all in on Amari, and I hope we can figure out a way to re-sign him.
No, the whole team's working well, and hopefully that continues. But next 2 weeks are easy games against Redskins and Cardinals. Someone not so great anyway, so it's definitely going to help the whole team contract-wise, and especially Dak. He's going to get paid insane. But I think that's it for the episode.
Yeah, I think it is. I'll just say that I did watch the Cardinals game too, and I was actually the offense that they're running with Kyler is such a waste because it's a lot of checkdowns and slants over the middle. I'll get this out quick, sorry, so you can go. But it's a lot of checkdowns and slants over the middle. But man, when Kyler gets, like, he has to run out of the pocket a bit because of the pressure. But when it got to the point where Kyler was leading the comeback and they needed to force it deep and Kingsbury let him wind it up, holy shit, man, he looked insane.
And Larry Fitzgerald just came in clutch as he always does.
Oh, yeah.
It's just 50-50 balls. He catches them every time.
Yeah, but I mean, a lot of those 50-50 balls were right on the money where it was a 50-50 ball from Kyler. I was so impressed. Like, I really think, like, if Cliff Kingsbury starts trusting Kyler, and obviously they'll develop because Cliff's in his first year as a coach, like, if they start game planning for each other, I think could be a very special Cardinals team. Because the way that he led that comeback with the Cardinals, who have Larry Fitzgerald and that's it, was insane. So, I mean, I'm all in on Kyler too. I'm all in on the Raiders still. Like, so many good stories that I'm hoping come true, but I can't wait for them all to go 4-10 and break my heart, or 6-4-12 and break my heart.
Yeah.
So,
oh well.
I mean, I guess that's it.
Yes, that's it. So once again, thank you very much for all tuning in. And as I plugged at the start, if any of you guys who are listening aren't following the No One Asked podcast, it's No One Asked _podcast. So go give us a follow, give us any feedback you like, or if you want us to bring up any future topics, if you've made it this far, just hit us up on that. We're happy to reply to any feedback, get your comments on what you want about a few topics, or if you want us to bring something onto the podcast, more than happy for it. So thank you very much for that.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks everyone for tuning in this week. We'll see you next week.
Thanks.
Peace.
Bye.